I have covered both Percy Jackson theatrical films on this channel, and let's just say I was less than impressed. Despite liking the cast, I found the films to be boring, poorly made, excuses for adaptations of my favorite book series growing up, something that many people seem to agree with, including the author of the series himself. When the TV series was announced 4 years ago, I was excited to finally see the books done correctly, with good old Uncle Rick on hand to make sure the production and creation of the adaptation would go smoothly. Well, the series finished airing its first season in January, and I loved it so much that I didn't watch the final 2 episodes until late March. Yeah, let's just face the elephant in the room. Percy Jackson's show was pretty mid. I think there's a lot to like, and I can feel and see the effort and love put into it, but I think for a number of reasons, it just didn't coalesce into something that I would really want to go and rewatch again. It's not bad by any means, just sort of disappointing, especially after such a long wait. I just now finished the series, and since I reviewed the movies, I figured it might be worth talking about the show in a similar format. This is why I think the Percy Jackson show is mid. Before we get into that, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with your friends. Any little bit helps. Firstly, I think the cast for the most part is pretty solid. The main gods are all pretty well casted and acted. I really like Poseidon in this show. Toby Stephens gives him a lot of weight, and he's able to give the performance where you really believe him as this powerful god who wishes he could do something to help his kid. Anytime Jason Mantzoukas is in something, you're going to enjoy seeing him, and him as Dionysus, the drunk guy, is great casting. Chiron is great. This is the first Lin-Manuel Miranda role I've liked in a while, and Ares is a lot of fun. Adam Copeland is able to give a strong, scary, but lighthearted portrayal where you know he's dangerous, but he's also having a ton of fun giving these kids a hard time. Lance Reddick, R.I.P., is great in a short amount of time, and really all around the gods are pretty great. I liked Percy's mom a lot. All of her scenes are basically of her telling Percy how important he might be one day. You can tell she really cares about Percy and how hard it is for her to have to send him away all the time. She's really believable and a great part of the show. The adults are all pretty solid, for the most part. Let's move on to the kids. I think the kids are okay for the most part. Aryan Simhadri, I'm sure I'm messing that up, apologies, is pretty solid and probably the most consistent performer across the series, at least when it comes to the kids. He's pretty dorky and timid, which is 2 key aspects of Grover from the books. He also has some solid scenes with Percy. Percy himself is played by Walker Scobell, who I think has the potential to really make this role his. I think the writing underserves him sometimes, as Percy just doesn't get to be that funny in this series like he's supposed to be, but he portrays the hurt and anger Percy deals with and feels in the books really, really well. He conveys a lot with his eyes, and when he speaks, he does a good job of not sounding whiny or annoying. He's pretty well casted, and I really hope he gets to be funnier in the upcoming seasons. Also, just dye the hair, man, or give him a wig. I don't know. Just how hard is it for TV shows or movies to just give your actor a wig or dye their hair? First, Mystery Incorporated did this all those years ago when they just didn't give Fred his blonde hair for some reason. I don't know. It just seems so easy. I don't know why productions don't do that, but whatever. The only real issue I have with the main cast, and I hate to say it, is Annabeth. I know there was a big controversy because she's an African-American girl playing someone who is white in the book, and the far right loves to pick on kids for simply existing, and I have a lot of sympathy for that. Leah Jeffries, for what it's worth, seems like a sweet girl, and this is obviously a big, exciting role for someone that young. All I'm saying is she has some work to do with her acting chops for future seasons. Suffice it to say, if I hadn't known better, I would think this is someone who is acting or simply reading out loud for the first time. Her line delivery is so weird, and it sounds like she's struggling to really articulate or perform her lines. I feel bad saying this, but every sentence just sounds like a struggle.
Always in danger, even the strongest ones, even Thalia. And you are not Thalia. Do exactly as I say, and maybe you survive this. Are we clear?
Yes. I saw you argue. I heard what he said. That what happened to his mom was your fault. That it was all your fault. That he hated you. Help us get to the underworld.
I really hope she gets better because I do see Annabeth in her, but she's by far the worst actor on the show who is given a regular amount of screen time. I'm hoping for the best for her in the future, for sure, but she was not good this season, and there's just a lot of work to do. Let's move on to the more technical aspects of the show. I think the music is done pretty well. It's not too memorable, but it's not bland either, and I think with more seasoning and time, it could be something pretty great. The theme that's used in the end credits is pretty great as well. The production design of the physical sets is pretty solid, and they did a good job of location scouting and finding something that looked like Camp Half-Blood. The Lotus Casino is done well too, along with Medusa's shop. My issue is more with the volume and the CGI worlds the show creates. Everything is given this gray filter on it when they go into a location like the underworld or even the beach for some reason, and nothing feels real. Things are also not blocked out well or made up, so the weight of the locations is felt. There's a scene where Hades is walking towards Grover and Percy in the underworld. He's just walking in this big straight line with nothing around him. It really makes it obvious that this is just a green screen. The uncanny valley is there the whole time. Even stuff like the beach, which they could have just shot on a real one for, is made to look hazy and weird. I think the volume is a good tool that is often misused and over-relied on. When the Batman used it, they used it very little, and they made a whole building set and actually lit the scene and thought about blocking. It just kind of feels like the people behind the show were like, just shoot it and we'll fix it in post. The editing is a bit weird in this show too. For one, there's no title card or intro, only in the end credits sequence. The scenes will build and end, and there's just a black screen like you might see when going into a commercial break on a TV network. It's really weird pacing, as this show will do a nice job of building up to something, and then just cut to black before picking back up a second later. It makes me wonder if they are intending on airing this on ABC or something later, like using it in some sort of syndication, but I feel like it makes more sense to do that for those versions rather than the original streaming version. But I guess that's just me, I don't know. Now let's go into the most important part of the show and where I find the biggest issue, which is the plot. So for what it's worth, this show does adhere more to the plot of the books. I'm not someone who needs everything perfectly adapted from a book for me to like this show. You can certainly take some liberties, but the original movie series did a pretty poor job of doing anything to make up for its lack of adaptation or provide any good reasons to not adapt stuff straight from the book. For one, there were new scenes in place of old ones that either mucked up the plot or didn't make the case for its existence or replacement, like the scene where they fight the Hydra and those stupid fucking orbs are introduced. And then obviously the biggest crime was the lack of Kronos at all in the first movie. Here's the main villain, the big bad, the Voldemort, and you just don't mention him. That's just poor franchise planning. There's other smaller things like Clarice not showing up until the second one and the lack of Ares at all. That's just really, really annoying. But if it had been done well or thought out, these changes could have worked. That's where the TV series actually does pretty well, and this is a pretty recognizable adaptation of the book that makes a point to mention Kronos and unveil him as the big bad, with plenty of scenes along the way that match up to the book. There's a few new scenes here and there, like the Tunnel of Love, that aren't in the book, but I think actually make a case for them being here. I like how this is obviously supposed to be some foreshadowing for Percy and Annabeth's future relationship. We get the Medusa and Lotus Casino scenes again, and they're done solidly well as obviously the capture of the flag and scene with the Minotaur, among others. I don't really have a lot of issues with these scenes as a whole. My issue is just that every character knows everything, and the plot never allows any stakes to happen. I guess this could have just been in the character section as well, but they're the ones moving the plot forward, so I saved it for this section. The characters and the writers behind them do not let suspense happen in this show at all. Anytime there's a new god or a new plan from the villain they're going up against, they instantly know who that god is and what they're doing and how they're going to stop it. Grover figures out it was Ares trying to set them up by stealing the lightning bolt. Percy knows who the god with the beds is and what they want from him. Annabeth just knows everything. It's so weird, and they always know how to get out of it relatively unscathed. There's not a lot of lessons learned or any actual charactering. They just know everything and how to fix everything. This is so weird, especially because Rick Riordan is a big voice behind the scenes. And in the original books, these characters are low-key kind of dumb. Percy makes a lot of jokes about not paying attention when he's about to die or get in a big fight, and in this, there's just none of that. It's just so weird not to write stakes in your story. There's the big overarching stakes with the solstice and everything, but there's not the encounter in, encounter out stakes that really move your story along and keeps things exciting. You gotta wonder if it's a budget thing, like they just didn't want to write in all these action scenes, a Disney thing where they didn't want their new YA characters to look stupid, or just poor writing. It's probably all three, knowing how TV and just big franchises can be written sometimes, but regardless, it makes for a show that starts to feel long in the tooth near the end of its 8-episode run, as everything starts to feel samey. This was basically why I stopped watching for so long, because it was just so boring and predictable. Obviously, I read the books, but I was so interested in how they would adapt it across TV, and the answer was to make every episode as boring as possible. It's not enough for me to not root for the show, but it was enough for me to go sour on it by the end of its run. Here's hoping season 2 is a little more exciting and the characters actually resemble their book counterparts.
I'm sorry.
So that's it. Percy Jackson season 1 was pretty mid. There's a lot to like with some pretty glaring issues. It's already been renewed for season 2, so we'll have to see if they learn from their mistakes or keep it going in the same boring way. Considering how long it took for season 1 to get made, basically 4 years from the announcement and 2 years in production, it's going to be a bit till we find out, and the actors will probably be like 30 years old with kids anyway, so it won't matter. For now, I'm going to score this one a 5 out of 10. It's closer to a 5.5 than a 4, but not close to a 6. Thanks for watching.